This show is recorded live on Friday, April 11th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. Tune in, join the live chat, and call in during the show by going to adamversustheman.com/live. There are lots of theories as to why the freedom movement, liberty movement, libertarian party, just people who care about liberty in the political context in America, why this movement of beautiful, sexy, compassionate people is unfortunately dominated by basement-dwelling men. Yeah, I hope that's not too much of an overgeneralization, but there are lots of theories as to why this is. Some about, women and minorities being more protected or propagandized by government. Some about, that men are braver and more willing to step out and try something new, or are more courageous. We're the trailblazers and the revolutionaries, and we're smarter, we're more open-minded, or we're the innovators in society, when generally speaking women are less so. But really it's a lot of INTJ kind of guys, sitting in their parents' basements, the armies of spammers. And all of these theories, I mean, even if you say it's just that women are more propagandized to believe that the state is there to protect them, it's still somehow based on this premise that, men are somehow smarter or more clever than women, or better able to figure things out. Like, really, guys? Is this the best we can come up with? And I'd like to think that, all of these theories have some merit. They're all, at least in some way, some contributing factors to why the freedom movement in America is male-dominated. But seriously, men, I mean, really, who's responsible for statism? Who are the trigger pullers? And there's a lot of talk and a lot of excitement now that Hillary Clinton is going to be the first female president of the United States of America, if she's actually qualified. But, to be the first woman. Anyway, but for the ladies out there who are really excited about this, yeah, we're going to have a woman president. Oh my God, America's finally there. Really? Being president of the United States is a disgusting, violent, shameful job. Women should be proud. Hey, we've never had a woman president of the United States. Yeah, because we're that much smarter than you dumb men. Really, this is an embarrassment. Statism is an embarrassment to men, certainly a lot more than it is to women. I mean, police brutality, wars, bad laws, politicians. If anything, when I hear women saying, we need to get more women on Capitol Hill, it's like, really? Why do you want to ruin your gender? Why would you make yourselves look bad by having more female politicians, right? All right, so I'd like to suggest a different theory here, at least another potential explanation for this situation. And the reason I would suggest that there are so few libertarian women, and there aren't, there just happen to be a lot more men, at least visibly, but it's that when a woman becomes a libertarian, she is imbued with a sense of inner strength and mental freedom that makes her about 10 times as attractive. And I don't mean this just because she's wearing the label, because listen, guys, there's a lot of them out there that don't know they're libertarians or would never call themselves that, or simply aren't very visible. And there's a similar effect when men become libertarian, but it's much less significant, right? And the thing is, a woman libertarian, when a woman becomes libertarian and automatically just becomes 10 times as hot as a non-libertarian woman, she instantly attracts throngs of suitors. And they just, I mean, ladies in the room here can testify to this, that as libertarian women, they get way more dudes. And they get to be way more selective, right? And all of them, end up becoming libertarian as a result. I'm libertarian. Yeah. Nice chest. I'm a libertarian. Yeah. I think we've witnessed some experiences like that here. But this is why we have such a gender imbalance. I mean, you think about it. Why are libertarian women more hot? And it's not because they got the label. It's like it changes a woman. It changes how you think. It changes everybody, but you live differently. When you're a statist, when you're one of these relatively pathetic people who is really set in this mindset of, oh, people are bad. I need to be ruled by force. I need to be governed. I need a leader. I am willing to have my will subverted for utilitarian purposes, or whatever the hell is the absurd rationalization behind statism that gets you past that cognitive dissonance of saying that you don't actually own yourself. Because remember, that's the entire premise of libertarianism. You, as a free, beautiful, independent human being, own yourself. Would you want to date someone who isn't like that? Who believes that they should be subservient? I mean, of course not. Now, one of the other nice things about libertarian women is that, if you aren't as, if you're not falling for the statist propaganda regarding health and fitness, if you're not going, oh yeah, Big Pharma signed me up. If you're not saying, well, the FDA said this was safe, so I'm going to eat it. Yeah, I mean, you tend to be fitter, healthier. I would certainly make the case sexier. And I mean, that's true about men as well, but obviously, sorry guys, it's not as effective. But the awareness, libertarian women have a greater sense of the world around them. I mean, if you're just like, in the statist mentality, I got my blinders on. I don't want to know what the government is doing overseas. I want to pretend like I don't even know what's going on the other side of the country. I don't want to pay attention to police state abuse or anything like that. You want that to be, like the mother of your children? Really? Like you want someone to raise your children who's just going to be, or to be a life partner who's going to be so myopic as to not have any sense of the world around her? I hate to put it so direct, but being not brainwashed, I find that sexy. Yeah, being brainwashed, that's kind of a turnoff. But the other thing is, you see a lot of people who don't get the philosophy that are passionate about making the world a better place, or, like the statists loves to say, it's for the children. But a libertarian woman understands that when she is fighting to make the world a better place, she's doing it for herself because she wants to see the world a better place. It's a whole different attitude. And, I think a lot of the women that are out there are really sort of, the quiet libertarians. And our good friend Jeffrey here, who likes to hang out at strip clubs. I mean, he just, what, really? Where did you meet your wife, Jeffrey? Oh, at a bar. At the bar in the strip club. Right. Okay. So one of the things that we've benefited from Jeffrey's field research of this topic is that especially strippers tend to be very agorist. I mean, you think they're paying taxes on all those singles you're throwing at them? Hell no. And there's something very, very attractive about that. There's something very powerful, very empowering about that. But they're not like obnoxious men. Oh, hey, I figured this out. I got to tell people about it. Hey, Jeffrey, you got your audio coming out of your computer there. So, they're not like us obnoxious men going, well, I'm a libertarian. Let me now convince the world that I'm right about everything. It's a different kind of experience when you're a woman and you become a libertarian, and you're not like just compelled to, throw your dick out there and swing it around and be like, I'm a libertarian, right? So we've got some interesting comments about this. I posted something on this idea on Facebook at facebook.com/Adam versus the Man earlier. I want to share a couple comments. Tynan Moni writes, female anarchists are pretty hot until the boys realize what that actually means, and we're actually committed to it, and then we're scary. Read, powerful mental freedom and inner strength that is intimidating, and it's easier to think we're nuts than put any real thought into the benefits of anarchy. And of course, here she's using anarchy as libertarian anarchy. And it's like, where are you finding these men that are afraid of strong, intelligent, assertive women? Are you like, and you know what? She answers the question herself. They're pretty hot until the boys realize, well, you need to start dating some men. We're out there, Can Abyss, statists think anarchists are unattractive and vice versa. No, and this is not true. This is like, you think there's this divide here? And it's not that like libertarians versus non-libertarians, or statists versus libertarians, but it's a matter of real lifestyle and attitude, and it's something much more inherent than these labels, because being a libertarian, saying I'm a free, beautiful, independent human being, and I'm never going to let anyone tell me otherwise, that's fucking hot. And it doesn't matter if you assert that in your life and then go, oh, well, I'm going to vote for Obama. I mean, you're still hot because you're living libertarian. And Jesse Rose writes, yeah, right. Men like their women weak. I shall not be moved. Well, I'm not asking you out, Jesse, but seriously, this is where like humanity is evolving from being this, oh, well, all the men are going to be in charge and we're going to like beat down to women and they're going to be subservient and barefoot and naked and pregnant in the kitchen and like, or was it just barefoot and pregnant? Barefoot, naked, and pregnant. Okay, fine. So naked with shoes? Naked with shoes on, even hotter. I mean, traction, right? I mean, if you're going to be naked, you still need traction. I'm just saying. All right, so this is like the next, I mean, level of having a fulfilling life and a fulfilling relationship. To be able to say, I am a free, beautiful, independent human being, and you deal with people differently when you're a libertarian, when you live this way, when you assert this. You don't, I mean, if you're a statist and you're saying, I need to be governed, how do you think that's going to carry over into a relationship? You don't think that's going to have some, effect on all of this? So this message is really for all the ladies out there who aren't libertarian yet or haven't figured out that they're really libertarian. So if you don't believe me, ladies, just become a libertarian. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. And today is Friday, April 11th, 2014. You're listening to the Adam versus the Man podcast. And I forgot to change a piece of wiring here. Yeah. So we still had stuff coming out of the speakers, but I think our audio was just a little feedback on the live stream. All right, cool. We can handle that, and the recording is going to be plenty clear. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We got a stacked show. We got Sheriff Matt coming on at 12:30. We have a wonderful statist joining us at 1 o'clock. Jarek Fontaine is a first-time candidate running for state senate in Maine. Going to be interesting. We'll get into that at 1 o'clock, and then we're going to spend the rest of the show taking your calls. As always, send your love mail to adam@adamversustheman.com. I'm supposed to make some other announcements, right? Sponsor the show. Donate to support the show. If you want to join us, we're in Los Angeles. It's fucking awesome here. Intern with us. We can get you trained up in how to contribute to the editorial process or to video editing and so on and so forth. But we do have some fun stories, but we're going to get through some serious stuff first. So, from CNSnews.com, Senator Sessions, deliberate plan by president to collapse U.S. law enforcement system. If only it were true. But he's getting a little more specific here. And, it's funny to hear Republicans, especially on the issue of immigration, be so anti-freedom. Simply freedom of movement, freedom to choose where you live. Senator Sessions said today that Americans need to stand up to a, quote, deliberate plan by the President of the United States to collapse the nation's law enforcement system regarding illegal immigration. Quote, our law enforcement system is in a state of collapse, and it's a deliberate plan by the President of the United States, and it's wrong. And people need to be aware of it, need to stand up to it, and I believe the American people are beginning to do so. Okay. No, we're living in a fucking police state. It's not in a state of collapse. Like, really? This, like, I guess if you're on Capitol Hill, you're sort of by definition detached from reality. But seriously, this is a much broader issue than this narrow immigration thing. When you understand what the words he's using mean, our law enforcement system is in a state of collapse. Well, what is the law? And I really prefer Bastiat's definition or perspective that the law is the means by which people try to live off others. And in America, it's no different than anywhere else in the world where we don't have a justice system. They call it a justice system. It's a legal system. That means how we force people to do the bidding of politicians. And by we, I mean the enforcement class and the string pullers and the people that are really behind government. Senator Sessions rebuked U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder and Vice President Joe Biden for their pro-amnesty efforts. Yeah, how dare we let people be free? We need to punish them and keep them from being American. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So this is the quote from Sessions. So you come into the country illegally and the Attorney General of the United States declares that these individuals have a civil right to amnesty. How can this possibly be? The chief law enforcement officer in America. Vice President Biden recently said, quote, 11 million people live in the shadows. I believe they're already American citizens. 11 million so end him quoting Biden. Back to Sessions. 11 million undocumented aliens are already Americans? Goodness, the Vice President of the United States would make such a statement. It's stunning beyond belief. No, what is stunning is that you, Senator Sessions, call yourself an American. If America has anything to do with standing up for freedom or individual rights or freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom of where to live, you are an enemy of freedom. And you're sitting on Capitol Hill as an anti-American. And not only that, of those 11 million people you think are not Americans, guess what? By any definition, they are far more American for their courage to defy the law, for their courage to stand up for their own rights and their own freedom than 90+% of your constituents and most other American sheeple out there. Am I not supposed to use the word sheeple? Was that okay, Jeffrey? In that context, in the big general, hey, these are sheeple? I can't say that anymore? God damn it. All right, well then let's go to a fun story to make up for it, shall we? From My Fox, New York, cops, postal worker sold pot out of his mail truck. Yes, that's right. And you would think if you're going around delivering packages and the government says, well, these packages are illegal, you'd think, oh, geez, perfect opportunity, right? It's a perfect business plan. I'm already getting paid to go on this route and visit lots of people. Nassau County Police arrested Jimmy Henry, 29, of Freeport, saying that they saw someone later identified as Jenny Papas, 24, of Wantagh, run into the rear parking lot of the post office on Merrick Road and meet up with Henry. They say that Henry then went into a postal truck and came out with a silver container and handed it to her. Police say she put it in her pocket and ran back to her car. The officers went up to her and say they found marijuana in her lap. Now, just to put this in perspective, there are crime labs in the United States where you have rape kits backlogged. A rape kit is what you get when you're raped and you go to the hospital and you get a biological sample so that you can have a DNA testimony against your accuser from it. This means there are law enforcers. I guess I should put that in quotes. There are people who call themselves servants of justice who care more about busting people for smoking pot than raping other people. Yeah, welcome to the American police state. They then went to Henry and found a black bag containing a substance believed to be marijuana in the postal truck. Pappas and Henry were arrested and charged with drug charges. Both are due back in court later this month. I don't get it. Paying someone to deliver pot is like the only worthwhile thing we've seen the Obama administration accomplish in the last 4 years. From Reuters by Steve Holland, White House says Iran official will not get visa for UN ambassadorship. The White House said on Friday that an Iranian official who was in the student group that took U.S. diplomats hostage in 1979 will not be issued a visa to allow him to become Iran's ambassador to the United Nations. Now, there's a lot of back and forth and tit for tat, and all of this is happening in the much bigger context of the current, I don't know, how do we sum up this process? Bullying, victimization, setting up of Iran as the next target of the American military-industrial complex. And in fact, just by the saber rattling, it already is. I mean, how much money is being spent based on, oh my God, there are threats around the world. We got to look out for these crazy Holocaust deniers who are really anti-Zionist. But it's okay because the motivation behind this, as we know, is money, power. And in Iran, it's a juicy target because they're easy to dominate, to demonize. They've got oil, and you see what it's really all about, right? Jay Carney, White House spokesman, said the United Nations and Iran had been told that we will not issue a visa to Mr. Abu Tal Abib because he has a crazy sounding name that we can't pronounce. I mean, we can't even spell it. How could we give him a visa? The decision effectively bars him from taking up the UN position and was announced shortly after the vote to bar him. Now, this is because the United Nations headquarters are in New York. In order to be a part of the global conversation, the American empire gets to control that. Yeah, pretty sweet deal for the American government and its sponsors, right? The legislation which would need President Obama's signature, would deny admission to anyone as a representative to the United Nations who was engaged in terrorist activity against the United States. Okay, so Snowden's not coming back then? All right. But think about this for a second. By any definition, like if this was England saying, like let's say United Nations headquarters were in London, and it was like right after the Revolutionary War. And they said, sorry, we can't allow anyone in who's engaged in terrorist activity against the crown. Sorry, all the founding fathers instantly disqualified from being part of the global conversation representing America, right? Now, again, terrorist activity. And we know the government is blowing up that definition as much as they can, right? You know, everything is terrorism because it gives them an excuse to spend more money and do more crazy things and rip Americans off in the name of keeping them safe. But this particular act of terrorism in question here for the student riots, I mean, let's get into this for a second. Well, as Carney said, so just so you know about where this is going, we concur with the Congress and share the intent of the bill. The U.S. government objects to him because of his suspected participation in a Muslim student group that held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days starting in 1979 when the group seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, the Iranian capital. Now, suspected. We think you might have done this, 50 years or, 40-something years ago. And instead of, almost 40 years ago, excuse me. And instead of like figuring out whether you did, we're just going to say, piss off. Don't be a part of the conversation, right? But while I'm not condoning any particular thing that happened in Iran during that time, I don't think it's possible for someone who's an Iranian citizen, while the CIA is actively working to subvert your government, I don't think you can do anything against an American in Iran that would then constitute terrorism as opposed to, self-defense, national defense, trying to not have your country taken over by the American empire. So if you resist, beatings will continue until morale improves. The bill passed unanimously in both chambers this week in a rare show of partisanship. Now, why is that? Well, Iran is also kind of anti the U.S. dollar system, which means that all of the sponsors that, pay for the salaries or really the campaign funds for everyone on Capitol Hill, it's all the same people, and you're going to get Republicans and Democrats lining up to demonize Iran. But the problem is that this could create a precedent, and now you can deny visas for political reasons. Of course, when the government can call whatever it wants terrorism, then a political reason is disguised as a security reason, much like the existence of government itself. Now, most of you know that I'm a big fan of the TSA, and I'm a big fan of making them look like idiots and recording them and asking them, how many terrorists have they caught? Most of them don't know that the answer is 0. But, you can check out my YouTube channel for some of the fun we've had with that. And the last time I went through a TSA checkpoint, I stopped and asked the guy while I was getting patted down, hey, how many terrorists have been caught by the TSA? He says, excuse me, Mr. Kokesh, but I'm not going to be as intimidated as most TSA agents that you ask that question. And he was actually kind of a fan. He had seen a lot of the videos. He wasn't, I shouldn't say a fan, but he was familiar with our TSA activism. And he actually said that that my videos were part of the unofficial TSA training. But now they don't need any help from me to embarrass themselves from we see this now from Reuters, Air Marshal Director stepping down amid agency gun scheme probe. Now, I want to just preface this by saying, when you see a government agent going after another government agent for bad behavior, first of all, that they're not going to get punished as much as they deserve, but that the reason they're doing it, think about this for a second. You work for the government. You get your salary from stolen funds. you understand that what you do is fundamentally immoral, but in order to keep getting away with it, you need to have the credibility of your victims, the American people. So if one of the guys on the team, the big G team, goes off script and beats up some protesters when there was a camera rolling, or rapes a prisoner, or has piles of cash in a freezer, or whatever the case may be, the only reason you go after them is because they threaten the credibility of the racket as a whole. But when you see something like this is not like, oh, well, there's an investigation. We don't know if he's guilty or not. No, you just step down. I don't think so. So the director of the Federal Air Marshal Service is retiring after being investigated for his role in an alleged operation to acquire guns for his officials' personal use. Director Robert Bray's home was raided in December in connection with the ongoing probe, according to sources and documents. Law enforcement and congressional sources told FoxNews.com that Bray's recent announced retirement, which is effective in June, is directly related to the investigation. TSA officials say no such raid ever happened. But Bray allegedly is among several officials who were obtaining weapons through this operation. Now, if he was raided, I'm pretty sure it wasn't like the raid that I experienced, getting roughed up and having a flashbang grenade thrown in my face. But that aside, the probe stems from whistleblower accusations involving Federal Air Marshal Supervisor Danny Poulos. Sources say the DHS Inspector General is involved, and possibly the BATF and explosives. Oh, see, I still read it as BATF when I see Bureau Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, hoping it's a convenience store. But hey, you want to throw explosives in there now too, I'll take it. TSA officials disputed that those agencies are involved, but acknowledged that there is an internal review underway by the TSA Office of Inspection into the supervisor's alleged activity, which I'm sure will find some excuse for, giving him a slap on the wrist. Here in Los Angeles, we have a very interesting relationship with law enforcement. And this headline comes from Variety.com. LA Sheriff's Department mistakenly kills aspiring TV producer. And maybe it's just, big city in America, lack of accountability, although I'm sure NYPD is probably worse by some counts. But here it was a simple product of the fact that when an officer is making the decision whether or not to pull the trigger on someone, he's not thinking, or she, what are the consequences going to be? Because the consequences are usually something along the lines of paid vacation. Deputies mistook John Winkler for a stabbing suspect at a Palm Avenue apartment complex. He had reportedly left his apartment to help neighbors taken hostage by an unidentified man, was shot and killed. So the guy that's trying to be the hero here, that's going in and helping people, ends up getting killed. Yeah. 3 deputies fired at him when he rushed out of the apartment with one of the 2 other victims. He was shot once and died. The apartment door suddenly opened and a male victim came rushing out. He was covered in blood and bleeding profusely from the neck. Simultaneously, victim Winkler ran out the door, lunging at the back of the fleeing victim. Both ran directly at the deputies. Now, this is the official statement. Oh, he really, created a confusing situation where he was following another victim. He was lunging. Yeah, as he was running out, he lunged at his back, and so we thought he might be stabbing him. You really want to believe that? Both ran directly at the deputies. Yeah, if I'm stabbing someone, the first thing I'm going to do is start running towards the cops. See, police are trained by the system and the incentives created for them not to think, not to actually analyze the situation. They are trained. The system that we have allowed to be created is shoot first, ask questions later. The 30-year-old was just hired by Comedy Central as a production assistant on Tosh.0. He moved to LA 6 months ago from Washington to pursue a career in entertainment, and just another sad victim of the American police state now. And we're going to go to Sheriff Mack in just a minute, but first we have a quick story that'll put this one in a little perspective, in case you were wondering how this actually works. From humansarefree.com, the cop who pepper sprayed peaceful students, you remember this incident, will receive $38,056 for emotional suffering. Yeah. If you remember this was from UC Davis, a tax-funded college, by the way. This is, happened in November 18, 2011. For when students were there protesting corporatism and state violence. They were sitting in a line on a public sidewalk, surrounded by cops wearing riot masks, threatening violence, and they were attacked with a chemical weapon that is this like fire, extinguisher, little mini-sized thing of pepper spray. And Lieutenant John Pike, as well as another officer, used pepper spray canisters to drench the peaceful protesters in OC pepper spray. The incident was captured on video and drew worldwide outrage and inspired hundreds of memes. There's a quote from the one eyewitness who said, "Our line that they pepper sprayed was one person deep." At one point you can see it's like two people, but that's it. Two people sitting on a sidewalk. One of the officers began to remove us physically without the use of weapons. And Lieutenant John Pike ordered them to stop, raising his pepper can and saying, "Leave them, I want to spray these kids." Now, Pike was quoted as saying, "I hope I'm not the scapegoat for this one." He ceased to be an employee there in July 2012. His annual salary was $121,680. He collected full pay during the 8-month investigation while he remained on leave. On leave. You think cops won't hesitate to shoot someone when this is the punishment they're threatened with? He was effectively given a paid vacation after an unprovoked attack on students, and somehow it took 8 months to determine what was obvious to most people within seconds of watching the video. According to a UCD spokesperson, he remains entitled to retirement credit for his years of service. On October 16, 2013, Administrative Law Judge Joel Harder ordered the University of California Regents to pay Pike $264.50 per week to reach the total payout, minus $5,700 in legal fees for Pike's Sacramento attorney. Wow. This guy doesn't need compensation for psychiatric injury. He needs help and a jail cell. This settlement resolves all claims of psychiatric injury. His actions, this is what he should be accountable for. He should be locked in a jail cell until he has stamped out enough license plates to pay for this. His actions cost the university $1 million in settlement split between the 21 victims of the attack, and now the attacker will get another reward for his efforts. So we're very excited today to be bringing you Sheriff Richard Mack as our first guest, and we're actually going to be talking about what's going on at the Bundy Ranch in Nevada. And I really want to get into this with the audience because we've had some interesting conversations here in the Adam versus the Man studios about this subject and exactly how this is going to play out. And I really want to get the take of our audience in terms of what do you think is going to happen here. We're going to talk to Sheriff Mack about this and get his take on it. Sheriff Mack is really an old friend of mine, also a former professional marijuana smoker. We're not going to get into that, but he was an undercover narc before he got better and figured out the importance of the message of liberty. He is now a really admired and an incredible activist in the movement. But it looks like we're not getting him here. No thanks. All right, we'll try him one more time here. And I've hung out with Mac several times in Colorado. I got to interview him about his professional pot smoking days. But when we're gonna go to take some Skype calls. Maybe we should just take a call right now. See if anybody's on here. If anybody's chatting me at Adam Kokesh on Skype, and we'll see about getting Sheriff Mack on in a few minutes. So Tom Wallace. Somebody's not following directions. Don't add me as a contact. Just send me a chat about why you'd like or what you'd like to talk about. Liberty Phoenix. What are the tactics of self-government? That sounds like fun. But I want to get on to. We'll come back to that. Liberty Phoenix. Didn't we call Liberty Phoenix earlier this week? I don't remember. I like people who use their real names. You know how a lot of libertarians just change their last name to Freeman? Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Oh, okay, yeah, you're just like, I get it, and wanting to have a false name for specific purposes, but at least stick to it. Let it function as a name. I'm getting, I've got a chat here from the Witchfinder General. You see, there's a little picture of him here on the screen. It's Jesus on the cross with a Christmas or with a Santa hat on, getting pecked at by crows. He says, I blocked him for wishing you luck. I don't think I blocked anybody. I don't know if you're talking about Skype. I did start adding contacts, and I was like, I don't want contacts on my Skype. I'm going to keep this streamlined. See if we can get the Witchfinder General on the air here. Witchfinder General, are you there?
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable.
Oh, really? You're gonna chat at me and then get off during the show? All right. Oh, this is from yesterday. So let's go back to Sheriff Mack. See if we can get him on. Where do I get that? Recent. I have to type it in again. All right. Well, we're gonna get to some more news stories then. If we can't get Sheriff Mack on here. There's definitely a lot of other fun stories in the stack today. Some more police state stuff, and then we have a special comment at the end. Oh, did I not? I didn't even look at that story. I was just like, nope, that headline. That's all I need. Fake vaginas grown in labs. Run with that. All right. It looks like Sheriff Mack is not available. Sierra, do you mind seeing if you can get him on Skype on your computer? We can pull him up here. All right, and let me know what his status is. All right. You know, he's actually on his way out to the Bundy Ranch in Nevada, so he might not be available because of logistical reasons right now. So we can certainly understand if he's not available. But I would hope that maybe we have some people in our audience who are out in the area or have been out there. Someone said, "Sorry, I just woke up. You should do a later night show for people to call in. I'll bet you'll get people in the morning show doesn't get." But this is from Colin. Hey, I ended up legally dispersing my Remington 870 on my property. Discharging. Ooh, this sounds like a fun story we missed from yesterday. Let's see if we can get Colin on the line here.
Did you not see my message? I said that I did not. I just woke up.
Yeah, that's fine if you just woke up.
The first caller on sort of. You probably remember me.
When did we have you on last?
Oh,
you were the first. No, you were the first caller on the Sunday show 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you ended up giving that style to Stefan. I was like, I know I'm no Stefan, but you know.
Well, hey, Colin, can we get some video for you again?
As I was saying, I just woke up, and that's what I was saying. I'm not dressed, so it's just not.
I think we can handle that.
That's not very. Yeah.
So no. I want to hear the story. Do you want to tell the story? With your Remington?
I mean, I do. If you could get back to me in like 5 minutes, I could get you some video. Because I understand you appreciate video, but you know.
All right, fair enough.
Want me to get to the story.
All right, Colin, we'll come back to you if we can. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see. Eric Mackey. He'd like to talk about namely to be enlightened. The Bundy Ranch incident. All right, let's see. We've got Eric Mackey here. See if we can get him on. As well as moving away from the Federal Reserve notes to just simply trade. See, if you were to establish a full barter economy, eventually you're still going to have some kind of money emerge. Eric, welcome to the show. Are you there, Eric? Microphone needs to be turned on. Camera turned on. Hey, there we go.
Turn off the live feed.
Awesome. All right. Well, Eric, do you have a camera on?
I do actually, Adam. I purchased a webcam this time.
Sweet.
I'll get that working for you. How do I go about doing that, Adam?
This is not tech support. This is Adam versus the man. We are.
Oh, damn, wrong number.
Technical difficulties is my middle name. So, well, you want to talk about enlightenment from the Bundy Ranch incident, Eric?
Yeah. Actually, I woke up this morning to that, and I watched I didn't watch the entire video on it. I watched about half of it, killing time, waiting for the podcast, obviously, because I'm such a devoted fan. And from what I understand, what is going on over there now? They confiscated cattle. Is that right?
Yeah, the standoff, from what I've seen from the news this morning, the standoff is just continuing to grow a little bit and developing, but there's not a whole lot of fundamental change. I think there are more people gathering, there are more militia groups showing up, but we haven't seen any reports of significant numbers yet. So we don't know exactly how this is playing out. But I'm right now standing by my prediction as to what's going to happen, that the BLM is going to keep stealing cattle until there aren't any. And on the BLM land, and because it was the courts that said, that the BLM had the right to do this, there were a couple of court decisions that led up to all of this. That's how this is going to play out. I mean, the state has said these cattle can be stolen and destroyed because they are on government-owned land, and this is not going to be the final conversation that America has about homesteading and land rights usage, and all of a sudden everybody's going to get it and understand that Clive Bundy has a right to this property by virtue of homesteading, or at least by virtue of putting the land to legitimate use, and that he shouldn't be paying the federal government for that privilege, but that he has a right to do that as a free, beautiful, independent human being to have fair access to natural resources. And now what he has said, and this is kind of what makes it a cool story from a localism perspective, is that and by he I mean Clive Bundy, the rancher, has said that I'm never going to pay the federal government any money to lease this land, but I will pay the county. And it's sort of like, all right, dude, it's like one huge step in the right direction, but you're not quite there yet. Like, what difference does it make if it's the county or the federal government? Really, when it comes down to it, yes, the federal government is going to be bigger and more detached and worse and more violent and so on and so forth. But why would you have to pay the county to do something that you don't have to pay the federal government to do? Are you saying that the county actually claims legitimate ownership to this land? So it'd be cool if there was a more principled conversation going on around this, but I don't think there is.
Considering you're not even impeding anybody, making use of the land, and
right.
Well, I really can't wrap it around my head here, Adam, why anyone would ever want to interfere in these acts of peace and nonviolence. And why would you? They're not hurting themselves. They're not hurting anybody else. They're not. What are they doing wrong, really? What,
Well, I mean, you're asking questions as if the government makes sense or was premised on logic or reason. You got to stop doing that.
I really do. I think I get caught up in it, Adam. I think I'm still trying to believe that maybe the government isn't so bad after all. But I don't know. I'm gonna have to look more into that. But it's been a pretty interesting story so far. Are you going to be talking to that guy anytime soon?
Mr. Bundy himself?
Him or that guy you had on for the video?
Pete Santilli, yes, who was on the ground there. Yeah, we're planning on having him back on Monday to give us an update of everything that's happened over the weekend, and we are reaching out through him to Clive Bundy, and there's some talk that he is going to be willing to come on the show, and we'll get him a chance to get his message out here and really get it, because a lot of people who are talking about this issue, not just in the mainstream media, are looking at it from the superficial perspective, and I think we need to really get deeper to these principles, and I hope we can get a way to learn the better lessons from this. Anyways, Eric, thanks so much for the call. We're going to get Sheriff Mack on now for his thoughts on this. Let's see if we can find him in recents. No, and all that shows up here is all right. I'm still forgive me, getting familiar with exactly how to make Skype as smooth as possible for the show, but we are dialing up Richard Mack right now. Very excited to have him on. I think, from his perspective, even now, Sheriff Mack is not a libertarian by my definition, but he is definitely someone who cares about the principle. You know what? I kind of want to take that back because I think he is. And the last conversation we had was, we got him on, and he's running away from his computer. All right.
Here I am.
Sheriff Mack and I have had some really fascinating conversations about the importance of the county sheriff and how you get to the point where you have, a law enforcement official at the county level who can then say, well, I'm not government anymore. I'm a private citizen. I'm a servant of the people. And until then, the work that he is doing, until we get to the point where we can have that conversation, the work that he is doing, as you can see from his hat, CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association, is incredible. And is, of all the libertarian activism out there, and you talk about political versus awareness raising, what he is doing is really important for reducing the amount of violence and coercion that is unjust in America by raising the awareness. And I met another sheriff at CPAC, actually, who had been influenced by Sheriff Mack, who was at the annual convention for CSPOA, and the effect that this man has had single-handedly in terms of reforming law enforcement in America has just been immeasurable. He's the former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona. He's also, of course, an author, public speaker, and it could be summed up as the A-list go-to guy whenever there's a domestic issue of like what the kind we're seeing here at the Bundy Ranch that needs support. He travels all around the country talking to sheriffs about the power of their elected position. But his book, America's Last Hope, the County Sheriff, is one that has been used by countless activists to reach out to their county sheriffs. I highly recommend you check it out. If you can get a copy and present it to your county sheriff, it's an incredible way to put them on notice that people are paying attention in their county and adhering to these most important principles. Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Adam. And I can tell you that if I had been the sheriff in Washington, D.C., when you were arrested for dancing at the Jefferson Memorial, I would have stopped that.
Or for carrying a shotgun in public, too, I presume.
Well, yes, absolutely. But maybe they just didn't like your dancing. Maybe you weren't very good.
Oh, no, there's no maybe there. But there's also a very good reason that the District of Criminals does not have a sheriff as an elected law enforcement officer. Right. It only has appointed and hired law enforcement officers that are all too eager to carry out the whims of politicians. Now, Sheriff, I want to go straight into this with what's going on in Nevada right now in the Bundy Ranch. And I'd like first, before we get into what you would do if you were county sheriff, because that's the real punchline here, and I know we're gonna have fun.
No one's even asked me that yet.
What? All right, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna come back to that. But first, for people that aren't familiar with the story, can you give us a sense of what's going on the ground, and how did this develop as a conflict? And what is the legitimate claim to property rights here?
Well, that's really what I want people to address. I want them to look at the fundamental issues here. Even our former friend, Glenn Beck, is now using the same rhetoric and propaganda scheme as from the Obama White House, that the Bundys should have to pay their fair share.
You're kidding. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I got to stop. I got to stop you right there. And I'm sorry to divert the conversation for a second, but I heard that Glenn Beck was going out there and sending people out there to cover this on the ground because he was being supportive. You're telling me that Glenn Beck is now officially
taking... He's not supporting it anymore. He's on the other side. He's on the government side, and he even said that Bundy should have to pay his fair share of grazing fees because everybody else has to. Do you know how stupid that is? I know you know how stupid that is. That's like saying, I pay my fees to the mafia, I pay my protection fees to the mafia, and if I have to pay mine, then you should too.
Yeah, I'm getting screwed, so we should all get screwed equally, or exactly. instead of like, hey, how about let's not get screwed at all?
And that we have grazing fees in America that we have to pay to the federal government so we can put our cattle on
exactly right. It's
land.
Does the government own the land, or do the people own the land? And I'm actually I would hope that Cliven Bundy would actually take at least in principle a stronger stance, because what he has said is, I'm not going to pay the BLM, I'm going to pay my county. And it's like, well, you don't have to pay your county either, but Sheriff, please back to where you were. Glenn Beck has been all over the place, and I've been generally...
he wants it both ways. That's exactly right.
I've been generally very encouraged that he's moving towards liberty, but then he's so philosophically scatterbrained that he still is fundamentally a statist and believes in... Anyway, all right. Please continue as you were.
Well, the thing of it is that we have grazing fees in this country, and that we have to have the federal government micromanaging every facet of our lives, that the federal government runs our land in Arizona and in Nevada. They say they own 87% of Nevada. They say they own 83% of Arizona, that they run our education, our water, our air, our health care, and every facet of our lives. I mean, what we can take into our bodies, what we eat, what we do, how we run, how we walk. It's all federalized. How fast our cars can go, how we do our roads, how we do our traffic control. You know, it's none of their damn business. And the way we take back freedom in America is through the state sovereignty issue, where the states are sovereign. The states must reclaim their sovereignty and keep the federal government out. And that's exactly what Clive Bundy has said.
Well, there's one. Yeah, and there's.
I've known Clive Bundy for a long time.
Oh, excellent. Well, then I hope you can answer my next question, because it's the one thing that I haven't seen in any of the reports described is this ranch something that he has homesteaded on BLM land and he's got buildings there, or he has a ranch on land that the government acknowledges as his actual private property, and that you then have, you know, he's grazing out into public land, or has he fenced off some land that the BLM is claiming? I mean, what is the like on the ground logistics foundation of the property rights claim here?
You and your listeners must know that he and his family started this in 1877. We're talking 1877. And so it precedes any regulations that the BLM could have come up with. It precedes almost any federal bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. And the Constitution expressly prohibits ex post facto laws. Mm-hmm. So they can't make him anything that the Bundy family were doing before these other stupid regulations came along were superfluous, because they would be ex post facto. They had to be grandfathered in because they were there way before the BLM or Department of Interior.
Well, hold on. Just to be clear, the ex post facto issue, that means it's an after the fact law, and that means the government can't say the government can't say, well, all of a sudden, hey, there's lots of people smoking pot. Now pot smoking is illegal, and we're going to arrest you for smoking pot yesterday. Now,
right, exactly.
So that's partly the issue here. But even if the law changed, what they can say is what you are doing now is illegal. So that's only like, you know, half of the argument, right?
And I want everybody to focus on this: that the Bundys have just been running a ranch there, not hurting anyone. First, the government said, well, we're doing this to protect the desert tortoise. They've done that in Arizona.
And hold on, we have to, and if you mention the tortoise, we have to point out that just last year, and you would think like if it was some other agency, like the Agency to Protect Wildlife, or, you know, whatever it was, but it was the BLM had a facility where they were, you know, sheltering desert tortoises, and when they ran out of money, instead of, you know, returning them to the wild, they just started euthanizing them. They were just freaking killing hundreds of them. It's not about the turtles.
Where is PETA? Where is PETA? Why aren't they doing something? Why aren't they boycotting the federal government, boycotting Beck, out there protesting with us, running around naked, whatever they do? Why aren't they doing something? Yeah, right. I know, but it's so stupid. I mean, all of this is so stupid. This is the stupid federal government trying to get the American people to be stupid with them, support us in this stupidity, in this unconstitutional, lawless act. And all the Bundys are going here. Why does the federal government keep shutting down all the ranchers in this county? This is the last rancher out of dozens, literally dozens, that have been shut down by the government over regulation, and the Bundys have said, we're not leaving, and we're not going to pay your extortion fees. We're going to sit here and do our jobs just like we always have. Can you imagine if somebody came in and tried to destroy the livelihood of somebody in Washington, D.C., or some liberal? You know, what if I was trying to shut Nancy Pelosi's business down in California because of overregulation? I mean, you'd never hear the end of it. These are good, honest American people. These are people who want to be left alone. That kind of sounds like Randy Weaver, doesn't it? All Randy Weaver wanted in 1992 was to be left alone with his family, to live in a cabin, a very crude cabin up on the side of the mountain. These people just want to do their jobs, run a ranching business, and be left alone. And they won't do that. And they're going to come in there and destroy their livelihood. What are they supposed to do for income after this? Go on welfare? Well, look at all the welfare programs that are there.
Wait, no, that is what they're supposed to do. That is exactly what they're supposed to do. Get back on the plantation.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I'm glad you put it that way. That is a very good way to put it, because we have so many people now who are on the plantation getting mad at the Bundys because they don't want to be part of the plantation. They don't want to be part of the slavery. They don't want to be part of the subjects and submission and do what you're told, and all the laws have to be enforced. You know, the BLM is not enforcing laws. They're enforcing policies and regulations.
Right.
And they want us all to believe that their regulations and policies supersede the Bill of Rights. They don't. And you've seen that yourself. And that's why I'm telling law enforcement all across this country, put freedom first, put liberty first, put the Bill of Rights first, you are the guard of liberty for your jurisdiction. Sheriff Gillespie in Clark County is the guard of liberty. He's supposed to be keeping the peace in this incident. And where is he? MIA, AWOL. I don't have the authority to interfere with this. If you don't have the authority to keep your oath of office, then don't take it and get out of the way and let somebody else.
Okay, now before I ask you, I want to ask you just about what you would do and about how you think this is going to play out. But first, again, I got to get a better sense of the physical logistics on the ground. You know, we've seen videos of protesters getting tasered, having dogs, try to frighten them with dogs. We've seen protesters getting thrown to the ground by BLM agents. And you know what? I got to say, I looked at some of these guys. They've got their tactical beards. These are guys that were, pencil pushers or, bottom of the barrel grunts in the military, and they come home. And you know about this from law enforcement, from your experience. There are a lot of guys who get out of the military and they want to bring the war home. And these are guys who probably never saw combat. Maybe they did. But I think the guys that saw combat are generally not the ones that come home and want to beat up protesters, but the wannabes that didn't get their share of aggression out in the military, and they come home and you see them like, oh well, we're BLM cops, so we're gonna now we get to beat up protesters, and they're like, now just tactically speaking, they've got these tasers out. They're pointing tasers at people. Now, a taser is a weapon, just like a gun. You don't draw it unless you need to use it. I mean, you don't and they're just waving these tasers around and then shooting them almost willy-nilly at these protesters. It's insane. But where is this? Please describe on the ground. Is the Bundy Ranch something separate from the BLM land?
Well, they have about 150 acres where their home is, and kind of the headquarters for their ranch, and that is their own property.
Okay.
The rest of it, where the cows have been out grazing, goes to maybe 1,000, 1,500, maybe even into umpteen dozen thousand acres.
So they're not even claiming
at 20,000 acres where the cows have all gone off to.
Okay, so they're not even claiming property rights. They're not even trying to say we want all this grazing land to be our property or to own it the way the government's saying. They're saying we have our land. This is our ranch. This is generally open, unclaimed, in that sense, public land, not necessarily government controlled, but it's public land. We want access for grazing. That's it.
Yeah, the land isn't doing anything. And I will tell you right now, if you want to take care of land, put a rancher or a farmer on it.
No kidding.
That's the best way to take care of land in this country. We have survived because we have believed in that in this country. Now we have a federal government bureaucracy, now. And you're right, these guys are not trained. You could tell that they're not trained. They're not police officers. They have no police authority. They have no law enforcement authority in this county whatsoever. They are not supposed to be controlling those roads. In that incident you were talking about when they had their tasers out and the dogs ready, finally, who left? All the BLM agents left. Why didn't they just do that sooner? There would have been no conflict whatsoever if they had just withdrawn. And sometimes you have to have cops or agents and employees of the government that know when to do that sooner. And so they should have diffused the situation and walked away. It's okay to walk away. You don't need to let your pride get ahead of your butt on these sort of things. Just go ahead and do the right thing. I'm saying to do the right thing and that they ought to go home. And
it's
if it
great.
means they get fired, then get fired. But leave this scene before something really bad happens.
It's great to hear a cop trying to get that message to other cops. I mean, that I can't support you enough in getting that out. So let me ask then, cut to the chase here. If you were the sheriff in this county right now, what would you be doing?
Other sheriffs in Nevada have already done that. I don't have to make it up. It's not a hypothetical. Sheriff Tony DeMeo did it in Nye County, and Sheriff Ken Jones did it in Eureka County. And they told the BLM to get lost, and they would not let the cows be confiscated. And then the BLM said, we'll come back with our SWAT team. And Sheriff DeMeo told him, that's okay, I got one too.
Damn.
And so the BLM was smart enough not to go, but we have a sheriff that's missing in action and hiding behind his desk instead of getting out there and doing his job. He could have put the end to this a long time ago. And just tell them, look, I don't know what kind of legal matters you have going on with the Bundys, but that's a civil matter. And I'm not going to have you come out here and steal everybody's cattle in my jurisdiction. So if they owe you money, send them a bill, and we'll see how they handle that. But,
well, that's happened, right?
That the federal government could get involved with.
Well, that's already happened. There was it was a recent judgment that said.
I realize
right?
that, but still, I am not going to allow them to destroy this man's rights and his farm and his ranch. I'm not going to let that happen.
As a sheriff,
the federal government doesn't have authority to do that in the first place. And if we don't have sheriffs who've never read the Constitution, who don't know what it is to be an oath keeper and keep your oath of office, then these sort of things are going to happen. But the places in this country where we've had sheriffs stand for liberty, San Bernardino, California, the sheriff in 2003 told the BLM to get lost and get out of his county. Gary Amon in Owee County, Idaho, said the same thing. BLM, get out of here. If you don't, I might arrest you for trespassing. Just like Brad Rogers from Elkhart County, Indiana, told the FDA, leave the Amish farmer alone. Where you have sheriffs with the courage and the cojones to stand up for liberty, we win.
And you would
win every time.
You would also say a sheriff can declare this judge's ruling is invalid for enforcement purposes in my county, correct?
Of course he could, because you have to look at the jurisdiction. And my Supreme Court case says this, quote, now remember, this is the United States Supreme Court saying in the Mac Prince case, the only time sheriffs have ever sued the federal government and won a landmark decision, it says this, we have held, however, that states are not subject to federal direction. So if the state is not subject to federal direction, is the judge's order in this particular case federal? Then we're not subject to his direction. This is Nevada land. If there was any lawsuit or jurisdictional issues to take care of, any legalities to take care of it, it had to be done in a local court, not federal. So I'm having a problem with the federal government, and I have to go into their courts to solve it.
Right.
No, that's a stacked deck against the Bundys and anybody else. And so no, that's not correct. And plain and simply, this is not their jurisdictional issue. And just like in my case when the BATF came to our Sheriff's Association and said that we had to enforce the Brady Bill, I said, I don't report to you guys, and you guys can't tell me what to do. And they said, no, Congress passed a law, so yeah, you have to. And I said, I don't care if Congress passes 5,000 laws. I still don't report to them. This isn't their jurisdiction. They can't tell me what to do. And I sued them on that issue and won. But we should stop suing and start doing. We need to let them know they're not our boss, and to laugh at them or make them irrelevant.
It's a really important perspective you bring, though. Just that if you zoom out a little bit from where this is happening, you see that there are sheriffs who are doing their jobs, and when the sheriffs do their jobs, the BLM doesn't get away with this kind of crap. And now I would probably make the case that in most of America, you've got this giant hole where you have sheriffs totally not doing their jobs all over the place. But it's funny to think that in Nevada, you've got this one hole in this one county where they're surrounded by good sheriffs, and here you have this failure, and the BLM is now picking on someone to do this. And as we found out from Mike Adams with naturalnews.com. This has nothing to do with the tortoise. This is really about oil fracking contracts. And I'm sure that comes as no surprise to you that there is some...
I've seen those reports too. It doesn't matter if it is.
Right.
They still have no jurisdiction.
Exactly.
Whether they're trying to clear off this land, but you have to know they're up to something.
And it's not about the tortoises.
This is the last rancher. Does anybody get that? Does Glenn Beck get that? This is the last one in this entire county. The government has gotten rid of all of them. Why? God, come on.
All right.
This can't be proper. This can't be right. You can't be looking at that and say, oh, yeah, get rid of our food supply.
No, it's okay. We'll import synthetic beef from China along with all their lead-filled rice. Sheriff, just one last question here. How do you think this is going to end? How is it going to play out?
I really hope that if it comes to push come to shove, that we're like the Chinese student in Tiananmen Square, that we put ourselves in the way of the tanks, that we put ourselves and interpose ourselves on behalf of Mr. Bundy and his family.
Well, hold on. I got to put you on the spot here because and challenge that a little bit because they're stealing the cows. They're killing the cattle.
We'll put ourselves in the way and not let them do that anymore.
It's already. I mean, hundreds have already been taken.
Done some, and we've gotten there a little bit late. But we're going to be sitting down and having our own powwow about this. But my goal is first to work out a peaceful solution. But that whole thing starts with the Bundys keep their ranch and their cattle. That's where that starts.
All right. Well, I hope it works out that way, and I think you're a little bit more optimistic than I am. I'm
not optimistic. I'm not optimistic, but I'm telling you that's what I want to do.
Right. No, that if there could be a non-violent but forceful resistance that blocks either the traffic or the BLM coming onto that land, that you could actually put them in their place and make them go away. I'm a little more along the lines of thinking they're going to get away with stealing the cattle and then they're going to stop. And then they're going to let the Bundys be on their ranch, and then it's just going to kind of dissipate. But I hope
maybe we'll have to do them a fundraiser and buy them some more cattle.
Well, I hope more importantly that this is a place where, if nothing else, the BLM understands that there's some pushback, the American people are paying attention, and that it is going to alter the conversation in America when it comes to land use and property rights.
Hey, I want to know, my friend, I thank you for having me on, and I've got to get to another interview. They're waiting for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Richard Mack, sheriffmack.com. And we have another guest lined up we're going to bring on right away, Jarek Fontaine. Let's see, Jarek. And pull him up on Skype here. We're going to have another fun conversation here. That was really good. I'm really glad we got we got into those issues with Sheriff Mack, and it's really encouraging to see the relevancy here of what's going on. I just learned a lot. From hearing this about how there's that what is going on in Nevada is really where there's a hole in law enforcement, whereas around that county, or it's Clark County, right? It's still part of Clark County, which includes Vegas. Is that right? Where all this is going down? So they've got, counties surrounding that where you have sheriffs actually doing their job, and it's really just in where Clive and Bundy is that you have a sheriff that is saying, yeah, come on in, BLM. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now is none other than Jarek Fontaine. He's a first-time candidate running for state senate in the state of Maine. He has a baccalaureate in nursing and biology. He's worked as a nurse for 5 years and has a background in genetic research. I mean, sounds like a great guy to be an elected representative. Sounds like an upstanding guy with a great background. He's been published in the New England Journal of Medicine, served on a local state board committee for the towns he lives in. Jarek, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Adam. How you doing?
Outstanding. Really appreciate you coming on. I want to, first just open this up. What is it that's compelling you to run for office, and what are the issues that you feel strongly about?
Well, it's compelling to me to run for office is really the collapse of the middle class. I'm seeing a lot of people, my patients that I've taken care of, falling through the cracks, literally dying without health care. My mom has been without a job for over 2 years now and is still seeking to find one. It's so hard for regular middle-class Americans to find work, and it really bothers me. I chose to run for this office mostly because my opponent was actually going to run unopposed. And I just philosophically just didn't feel like we could live in a republic where we don't give people choice.
Well, I certainly sympathize with your compassion, and I think this is absolutely a critical issue for America right now, as we see by some ways of looking at it, the middle class being squeezed out, and certainly a lot of economic suffering. So, what's your proposed solution to address this, and how is this relevant in in Maine in particular, where you're still under the umbrella of the federal government when it comes to most economic policies?
Well, let's talk about the federal government and progressive policies that have been pushed by FDR and things like that. I don't believe the middle class is an accident. I believe it's actually was created by government legislation and pushed through by large, aggressive policies such as overtime pay, FMLA, sick days in some states, the minimum wage. I think those are basic protections. OSHA. Those are basic protections for workers. And so I think that's crucial for the creation of a middle class, is to have a federal government that fights for their interests. Because if we don't have that, we'll go back to the Gilded Age of the 1870s, 1890s, when we had the Rockefellers and the Warburgs and the Carnegies. And now we have it all over again. We have the Adelsons, we have the Koch brothers, we have the Waltons. We have a new aristocracy.
Did they ever go away?
No, they never truly went away, but at least the regular working Joe at least got a little more say in his government and a little better standard of living.
So why do you think, for all of FDR's policies, he still had the banking establishment that's really behind all of the concentration of wealth and power in the United States behind him?
I don't disagree with you in that regards, Adam. I believe the Federal Reserve has been good and bad. I don't actually believe that it's completely evil. I believe it's a bank of lending of last resort, and it kind of protects the banking industry and keeps it stable. But I find it disturbing that it's been giving sweetheart loans to the big banks, and they've been holding on to that money, and they haven't been loaning out to regular working people who are trying to establish businesses, which is what they're supposed to do.
Well, is that really what they're supposed to do? If this whole thing is based on the fiat currency racket, where they're able to create money and give it to their friends, isn't what they're supposed to be doing making the rich richer and the poor poorer?
Well, the Fed has two mandates. The one is for employment and to control the money supply. I mean, that's what the Fed does.
It's actually, price stability specifically. Full employment and price stability are the two mandates. Do you support the Federal Reserve having those mandates, or a central bank that's designed or allegedly designed to achieve those goals?
Yes, but but not the Federal Reserve. I think it should belong to the U.S. Treasury, which is answerable to Congress.
Well, let me hone in, if I may, so we can get into the meat of some of this. Price stability. You think that it's good to have a government policy for monetary supply where they're creating money in order to maintain stable prices?
Well, if you have economic growth, okay, and you don't have more money in the system, you get deflation.
Right.
And deflation, I consider to be quite bad. Because people aren't likely to spend, right? It's negatively cyclical, okay? And what that means is let's say that you have $1, okay? And next week you know that the bagel is going to be $1 if you just wait long enough instead of $2. So you keep waiting and you keep waiting, and all the while that bagel is sitting on the shelf going bad, so you're having supply destruction. And you're also having the person that sells the bagel and creates a bagel not have any income. So they're going broke all the while in the meantime. The purpose of money is to keep flowing in a nice circle. And if it gets gunked up, okay, then everything happens like the Great Depression, which is what happened. The Great Depression is money just disappeared because of massive fraud, and we didn't have any people with money. If you had a job, you actually did okay in the Great Depression. You at least were able to do okay. But if you didn't have money, there was no way to get money because everyone was holding so tight to it.
Wait a second. Hold on a second, though.
Sure.
You're trying to make the case that it's a bad thing for a bagel to cost $1 instead of $2. What you're saying is that you want prices to stay high and you want it to be harder for people to afford things. When
I want prices to continue to rise in line with wages.
Well,
So
if they're both
I
being
want wages
artificially
to go up
inflated,
in line
okay,
with prices, so the money supply, so it keeps that circular flow. I don't want it to take more time to work to earn that bagel. I want it to take the same amount of hours, and maybe even less.
Well,
I'd rather
yeah, but-
wages go faster than the prices of bagels.
Here's the problem with this concept of price stability, though. If we get more efficient over time, if humans get more productive, if we're able to do more by virtue of technological development and economic development in an 8-hour day, things should get cheaper so that quality of life goes up and people can afford more stuff. If you care about the middle class, you should want their quality of life to be able to go up and the purchasing power of their dollar to be higher. When you say that price stability is a good thing and you create all these justifications for it, what you're actually saying is that we are going to make it harder for people in the middle class to afford a higher quality of life. And when you do that, like, so let's say in 2000, America is X productive, right? The 100% level in 2000, they're that productive. And in 2010, we've had so much more development. 10 years later, there's more productivity. And now we're at 110% productivity. We're 10% more productive than we were in the year 2000. And of course, these are obviously just numbers for purposes of explaining these concepts, right? If you had the prices staying the same, what that would mean is that all the people that printed that extra money, all the government officials, all of the corporations, all of the banksters, that 10% extra productivity, instead of lowering prices 10%, those prices stay the same. The value of that extra productivity goes into the pockets of the superclass, goes into the pockets of the banksters. The solution that you're proposing is exactly the reason why we're in this mess in the first place and why the middle class is suffering today.
From 1940 to 1980, we had one of the most stable growth rates in history. Wages were in line with productivity. We had the strongest middle class. We were the best sciences. We had the best jobs. And we had the most stable banking system in history. We didn't have one failure until the deregulation of the banks starting in 80 with Reagan and going on to the savings and loan crisis in 87 and the bank in Lehman Brothers and all that great stuff and all in 2008. I mean, yeah, we have a massive credit bubble that's killing the country because we don't have fiscal policy in line with monetary policy.
Hold on.
I got
to challenge one of your premises here. You said 1940 to 1980, steady growth, all of that. Fine. The metrics that you're using to justify that then are based on the entire spending around the war economy, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, everything else since then, even the Cold War, all of the war spending that came out of that, all of the jobs and economic growth is measured in dollar terms as opposed to quality of life or real economic terms. And what you're saying about regulation, let me ask you a question. What is, because whenever you're having a conversation about these issues, it's really important that we make sure we're using words the same way. So I just want to get clear on this. What is your definition of regulation?
Rules that are passed by codified set of rules and set of behavior that we can agree on to protect the greater good.
Well, when you say
so
we
for
agree,
example,
hold on. No, that's great. That's great. But I want to get really precise with this. When you say a set of rules that we agree on, you're saying as through the political process, as by Washington in elected officials who pass laws and then give them to agencies who write these regulations, correct?
Right. We live in a republic. That's what your vote is for.
Okay, so when you're saying we all agree on, I just want to make sure we all agree on, you mean by some vague
Majority.
political process which is really controlled by special interests and politicians. Okay, so when they do this, though, this is what makes regulation distinct from, say, a trade society's rules or a company policy, right? When you violate a regulation, what happens?
Well, usually a regulatory body has been empowered by the executive branch of whatever the state government or the federal government and it's mandated to do what it needs to do, whether if it's a medical doctor, they'll lose their license. If it's the EPA, they'll, give fines or, prevent them from doing business, that sort of thing.
Okay, so what happens? So say like you violate a regulation that was passed by a politician on behalf of special interests in this policy, or that you describe as things we can all agree on, and then you don't pay the fine, or let's say, as you mentioned, you're a doctor and they take your license away, but you keep practicing medicine and you help someone. What happens then?
Force of law.
Force of law. What is that?
You know what it is. You say it on your show all the time, and you're right. The animus behind the law is force and coercion, but that's how you keep people to obey the rules. That's how you prevent people from stealing and killing and hurting others.
Wait a second. So we need force in order to make people not behave badly. And remember, when you said obey. When we say obey law, here you're talking about obeying politicians, right?
I'm not talking about obeying politicians. I'm talking about obeying the rules and codified set of rules that we created together as a republic for what we consider reasonable behavior.
Well,
now, I won't deny
that
there's corruption. Hold on. I know there's corruption, Adam. I know that there are some sweetheart corporate contracts. And yes, you're right. There is money perverting the system. I do not deny that. But I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater, Adam. I just don't.
Well, if it's a demon baby, I say get rid of it. And what you're saying is that the core behind every one of your policies is essentially pointing guns at people who are acting peacefully. Is that right?
Not everyone is acting peacefully. And no, I don't believe in pointing guns. You know, there are things that you can do without resorting to violence. There's fines.
Hold on. No, you say a fine. A fine is, I'm taking money from you. As a government agent, I am taking money from you. And if you don't give it to me, we're going to send men with guns to go and lock you in a cage, correct?
It depends on what it is, because I don't think it'll get that extreme for something as, say, dancing in the Capitol.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Thank you for raising that. But that's exactly what happened.
I don't think that's reasonable.
The proof of what I'm saying is the Jefferson Dance Party, where what we did was we danced where they said we couldn't dance, and the result was violence was used against us. And anytime the government says you are being fined for this, you cannot do this, you have to do this, it means if you disobey, we are going to use force against you, whether or not you're acting peacefully.
But it's not black and white like that, Adam. I agree with you. I think that, yes, you should have been able to dance. And yes, you should have been able to have your First Amendment rights on the sidewalk. And I think they might have overreached and overstretched too far. But there are ways to address that. There's the courts, there's your local legislator. Rules can be changed. I mean, that's the whole point of the system, is for us to work it, to make it work for the benefit of the public.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're able to have such a direct and open conversation about examining this, and a lot of people who hold these positions, like Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, have come out and denied that government is forced. And they say, even paying taxes is completely voluntary. And I think you're willing to acknowledge that this is part of what you're advocating, that this system that you're advocating is paid for by taxes, and that taxes are backed up by forceful collection. Is that correct?
It's the price we pay for living in civilized society. Either that or we live in Somalia.
Well, I would hardly call it being civilized. And what you're saying is that the uncivility of stealing from people through government is the price we pay for the civility of...
Whoa. What do you mean by stealing through government? Taxes? Taxation is stealing?
Well, what is theft?
Theft is taking something from someone else that belongs to someone else, right?
So does the government own my property when they try to collect it in a tax?
If you were to go in a movie theater and you were to sit on someone's seats and you were to eat the popcorn and you were to watch the screen and you were to enjoy all the benefits that movie theater provided you, you would pay a ticket fee, would you not?
Absolutely.
That is what you were paying. As being born in a society, an American society, you're part of a national compact. You have roads and schools. Wait a second.
By any sense of reason or common law, to impose a contract on someone against their will who has never signed it holds no justification whatsoever. Has no solid basis.
So you're saying we should not have any taxes? No public schools, no public roads, no Social Security for our elderly, no Medicare for our elderly. no one to prevent little kids from being molested because we don't want to pay money for like DHSS. I mean, is that what you're saying, that we shouldn't pay any taxes and have any government agencies?
Yes and no. When you say that we shouldn't pay taxes or shouldn't have to pay taxes, yes, absolutely. We should not have money stolen from us. The government does not own me. The government does not own my property or my income or have any claim to ownership over me. When it taxes me and says that money belongs to us as government, and if you don't give it to us, we're going to lock you in a cage, that's theft. That's wrong. As to your question to say, no, hold on, stop for a second. You also then decided to jump ahead and make a bunch of irrational presumptions about my position. I love roads. Okay. I love that there are these essential services that unfortunately are being provided for by theft through government and unaccountability. And that's why all of those services that you just described are so terrible and awful, and why what I'm seeing in this theater is disgusting and revolting, and I want out. I don't want to watch this movie where we have a police state that doesn't care about our rights, where we have a government that steals from us, where we have potholes in the roads, where we have a law enforcement system that you justify by looking out for people who are molesting children, and instead ends up destroying our children's future by selling them into debt slavery. The legitimate things that government does can all be accomplished non-violently, non-coercively. And that's the crux of this. So let me ask you, because I applaud you for the directness with which you are willing to engage in this issue here. But I have to ask, and if you are acknowledging that government is force and coercion, and that everything that it does, or maybe not everything, and I would say everything at least is premised on its ability to collect taxes by force, but that it is for force and coercion fundamentally, where is that justified for you? And what are the criteria for you in justifying force? What is it okay for government to do versus not do?
Well, I believe that I'm not a communist. I don't believe that the government should control every single part of your human behavior or life. But I do think government it's a tool. It's not like this other entity demon that controls people like they're puppets. That's nonsense. If I'm running for office, and so I would be part of the government if I get elected.
Right.
If you vote for me, or you vote for anyone, you are exercising your right to be part of the government and to create the government and determine the laws in which you live by. That is the whole point of living in a republic, for us to find a middle ground where we can find ways to agree on certain behaviors and ways of doing business.
All right, but I feel like you're a little bit avoiding the question here, because
no, you want me to say that I believe government is coercion and force, and I don't believe that's the only. I believe it's part of it, but that's seeing things in black and white, and it's just not that simple.
Well, give me the line that you draw for what is appropriate for government and what isn't. Because if you are saying that this institution is good and necessary and should exist, and remember now, you are standing on the side of the people that brought us the wars and the police state and the wealth gap. And
I'm not standing on their side.
Well, as an institution,
they
conceptually,
stand for.
No, but you are justifying.
I'm not in a box.
Right, but
life's more complicated than that.
And I am not blaming you for any of those policies. Don't worry. But you
are. Well, I'm just saying I don't believe in killing people for killing's sake or for social control run amok.
All right, that's a relief. Okay, we got past that. No, that's fine. But no, where do you draw the line? Things in this category are okay for government to do. Things
that are being abused, physically abused, or neglected by their parents.
Okay,
I'm a strong proponent in the protection of children, and it bothers me a lot to see children that don't have good dental care, and so their teeth are falling out and they're all black. It bothers me to see kids that are left alone late at night with no parental supervision. It bothers me to see kids not receive medical care and just stay sick. It doesn't work for me. I don't like it. I don't want to live in a society that throws away its weak and its sick and its poor. It doesn't seem like a just society to me.
Absolutely, and for the sentiment behind that, like I really couldn't agree more. Those are absolutely essential issues and critical issues facing society today. But then I have to ask, if we want to address those problems, I mean, it's bad for a child to be abused because you're violating the rights of that child. You're physically assaulting them. You're violating the fact that they are a free human being, that they own their body, that is part of the integrity of them as a human being, right? So if that is your motivation, wouldn't you want to find ways to address those issues that aren't based on committing the exact same abuse, although in a different way and on a different scale, against people in the community at large, and saying, well, the government owns you or the government can take your property?
Absolutely. But, okay, the world is populated by people and not ideas. And I want something that's going to work. And I know that the libertarian idea is very seductive. I was a libertarian for years, believe it or not, Republican for a decade. So I understand your viewpoints quite well, but I didn't see it work in action.
Okay,
what
well,
I saw
hold on right there.
It was neglectful.
No. What if you want to make the case that government can work for children or is working for children? I'm sorry, but the facts are not on your side. You want to look at the Department of Education. You want to look at Child Protective Services breaking up families. You want to look at the destruction of the middle class caused by government ripping people off to serve the super class. The government is making
destruction of the middle class is because they shipped all the jobs to Asia through free trade.
Because the government has made it too expensive to employ people here.
We'd have those middle class jobs.
Oh, the government is making it too expensive to employ people here through the kind of economic policies that I believe you'd be advocating. But more importantly, when
you're advocating for a race to the bottom.
I'm advocating for nonviolence. I'm advocating. No, I'm saying.
Well, are you for deregulation of everything?
I think that we can find the means to achieve what we might call regulation without the force and violence of government backing it up. I believe that
what about that situation in Virginia, West Virginia, where 300,000 people's drinking water was essentially poisoned? And what would you say? Would you say that protests against the company that did that would work, or some sort of libertarian means?
Well, and that's a great question about pollution, right? When you're polluting, when you are destroying people's free access to natural resources, that's a huge problem. The reason that happened, the reason that corporations get away with the pollution that they do is because they know that the government is going to protect them from accountability. The market, that is people voluntarily and peacefully interacting, provide far greater means of accountability than the government does. Because if you're a corporation that is doing some industrial activity that causes pollution, right? And this is a legitimate market problem, right? You have industrial processes that create byproducts that are damaging to the environment, that harm people's health. And if you're a company that does this, and you're going to say, well, it might cost me $100,000 to dispose of this pollution properly, but I could instead dump it in some water and hope no one notices, and I can buy off a local politician for $10,000, and if I buy them off for $10,000, I know that when people come to sue me for doing that the government will not hold me accountable. In fact, the government will explicitly excuse me from responsibility for that and say, oh, it's cool, we've got tax dollars we're going to spend on environmental cleanup, we're going to pay people off. And that company, because they're able to use government to forcefully protect them from that accountability, gets away with that pollution. If you had a nonviolent system for doing this, if you had a nonviolent society that wasn't based on coercion, you would never have corporations in the first place that were thinking that way, because consumers, instead of turning to government, and this is the problem, when someone like you says, let's turn to government for accountability, you're turning to politicians who are controlling men with guns, who have the lawful privilege of being able to point them at nonviolent people enforcing taxes and regulations to affect their behavior. When you have market accountability and people demand that, instead of saying, and this is what we have to change, and this is really the libertarian message, is asking people to seek non-violent, non-coercive solutions. If they were to say, you know what?
Elaborate what market accountability is to me, and how would you see that in a practical situation?
Absolutely. No, and it's a very simple concept of, not supporting people that are bad actors in society, not giving your money to people that are polluting. So in America today, when you have, like you said in West Virginia, you have a company, a corporation, a legal corporation engaging in pollution, when you have you don't have the opportunity for competition because regulation and corporatism makes it impossible for a consumer to say, you know what, we're not supporting you at all. You know, you have water monopolies, you have infrastructure monopolies, you have the road monopoly of government. You don't have competition. And competition means that you as a consumer have the choice to say, you know what, I'm going to give my money to a company that's not destroying the environment, that's not polluting. And what you don't see when you analyze this at a very simplistic level is that there is that alternative that has been taken away. It's the hidden cost of government regulation that says you don't even have a choice now. You have to support, if you want to drink in this county, you have to support. If you want water coming out of your pipes, you have to support the corporation that the government has appointed to be in charge of the water in this area and has been prevented from being accountable to the market.
So let's talk about that. The corporation that I don't think any corporation or any private business should control fresh, clean water. Okay, I believe public water should be a essential human service that we give to our people. I live in Maine, and in my town, we have a public water district which provides cheap, clean drinking water to our town, and it's very aggressive in protecting that.
It sounds great, and in some places, I won't argue with the fact that it works very well. And when you have certain local governments that are doing things like that, sometimes the result is sufficient. But when you say we should give, this is the great liberal fallacy. We should give money to poor people. We should give money to children that are disadvantaged. We should give money to organizations that are helping prevent cruelty to animals. We should do, absolutely, I support all of that. I think that's incredible. What we shouldn't do is say, well, I think people should give, so we should steal from everybody else in the form of taxes and then have government be the mechanism of distribution of those funds. If people get to choose where they are actually giving to, those funds will go to actually support those purposes rather than the whims of politicians who are corruptible, as you point out.
Then we'll go back to the Gilded Age of the Warburgs, the Rockefellers.
Thank you.
We'll have the child labor. We'll have dirty air again and brown rivers. We'll have people making meager wages because we will either be importing the workers or outsourcing it, you know, and it'll be a race to the bottom. And that's what it'll be. It'll be like the bad old days, because it seems like people have forgotten the lessons of history, and it'll be like that all over again. It's starting to be like that.
I just want to thank
we
you.
Haven't moved in 30 years.
You know, I didn't respond when you mentioned it earlier, but I want to thank you for bringing that back into the conversation, because the reason we had the concentration of wealth and power that we saw in the Gilded Age probably had something to do with the existence of central banks and governments and existing concentrations of wealth and power that were created by government. Those were not products of the market. And to believe that is to believe their own propaganda. And this is the real danger here, is that these major corporations, these major banking interests, these dynasty families, as you mentioned earlier, they want you to believe, oh yes, these corporations are bad. The Federal Reserve is good because that's the big money thing. It's controlled by the government, and we can convince you that it's controlled by the people.
I didn't say the Federal Reserve was good. I never said that.
You said it was half good. You said there were some things.
I said it does things that are good, but again, nothing is black and white. Nothing is either right or wrong. There are shades of gray.
Well, I believe, sir, that you have fallen for one of the greatest scams of government, which is to believe by these super elites that you need government to protect you from corporations run amok, and by doing so demand policies that put more power in the hands of government to control the economy, which is fundamentally what you're advoing. And if you understood that their power,
I feel the opposite. I feel that people like the Koch brothers that have given tens of millions to the Tea Party groups, which are trying to deregulate everything, trying to push wages down. The super rich don't want regulations. They want what you want.
No.
They want no taxes.
No.
They want no regulations. This is their dream.
No.
And if they can't have it, then they went the other way. They tried to use government as their own tool.
If
government
anything,
is a last protector of people who can't protect themselves.
If anything, it's a protection racket then, because you don't have a choice in whether or not you get their protection services. But the Koch brothers, if anything,
you vote.
So voting, two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. You think that is going to be an effective system? You think the tyranny of the majority is not
Then run for office.
does not lead to these predictable consequences. Well, I am running for office. I'm running for president in 2020 on the platform of an orderly, peaceful dissolution of the federal government, and I think that's a lot more in tune to the reality of these problems. But Jarek, I want to thank you for coming on and having this candid conversation. And I think if more people were willing to get into the heart of these issues, we could definitely improve the way we talk about them in America. And I wish you the best of luck in your campaign.
It was a pleasure meeting you. Have a nice night.
All right, we go now to the Skype for our for the audience. Well, that was intense. That was a lot of fun. All right, we're gonna have more of these. I think what did Anthony call them? Fascist Fridays. We're not calling it that publicly though. we want to bring more people onto the show who are going to have vigorous debates like that, and who are going to want to engage in these issues and really broaden the conversation. I think that was a lot of fun, and we want to get more guests like that. All right. Oh, Colin is ready, and he wants. He says, "Oh, regarding our last guest. Oh my God, I can't stand this guy. Lol. Either we steal from each other or we live in Somalia." All right.
I'm sorry, that guy, I was just listening to him. I just could not stand that for 1 second.
All right, Colin, let's get your video on here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that at first.
No worries. And I should have thought of this sooner. We are going to have something on the page at adamversustheman.com/live by Monday What's that?
That's what I was really thinking about. Like, here I am, I'm sort of ranting to you. You can't even see this shit while you're talking to him. Should be saying this to the live thing.
We're gonna have instructions for how to call in so people know, and nobody has any of these technical difficulties ever again.
Yeah, you guys improved the instructions though, as it is.
All right. Well, you know what? I think we're gonna put up a petition at whitehouse.gov to make technical difficulties illegal, and then we can end them once and for all.
I will sign that.
Okay.
I will totally sign that.
Thank you, Colin.
I'm not sure why my camera is not working yet.
You have it might be turned off in Skype, perhaps? You have the icon at the bottom of your call window. There you go. Awesome.
Perfect.
All right, Colin, welcome to the show. Tell us about this story with your shotgun.
Hey, so I live in Arizona, Pima County. I checked in with the sheriff's department to be double sure I can legally disperse of my shotgun, shoot something. This was actually my first time shooting it. I got this, I felt like, on one hand, I'm not a violent person, but on the other hand, I've seen what they're willing to do, and I want to be able to protect myself if there is a crooked individual who wants to cause harm to me. I'm not ever going to initiate harm. But so anyways...
Hold on, I want to just get clear on this. You're saying in Pima County, Arizona, if you're in a normal, unzoned residential area...
Right, other than, I'm sorry. If you're in Tucson, I think there's a city ordinance against it, but I'm far enough out of Tucson that I don't have that city ordinance.
So you are allowed to discharge firearms on your property for any purpose whatsoever, as long as you're not breaking some other law, violating someone else's rights. But for recreational purposes, sporting purposes, self-defense purposes, the discharge of a weapon is protected there legally.
Well, if neighbors complain, you're supposed to stop.
Okay.
Now, you can shoot legally, and then they have to come complain. Now, I ended up firing a total of 2 rounds. Then someone complained, and I said, it's my right. I'm not getting in the way of anything you're doing, but you know what? I'm sorry. I'll stop, If it bothers you, maybe I'll find another place, I want us to be peaceful, friendly human beings together, but so anyways, these guys, what they ended up doing, it was just crazy. They called the police. Another guy came out, he called me over, said, hey, the boy with the rifle, I'm holding a shotgun, of course, but he's saying he's an ex-police officer, but he's calling over essentially the boy with the gun. And, I just don't feel comfortable having a gun and going to some stranger. For all I know, this guy's going to grab my gun and shoot me. shit. So I'm just like, I want to put my gun away. I'm at my house already. I have my safe just inside. So I said, hold on, sir, give me a minute. Let me securely lock up my firearm and then I'll come out and talk to you. And, I had said sorry and that I'll stop. And, I didn't realize that it would cause you guys any issues. But so basically, I had gone in to secure it. And by the time I had come out, he was on the phone with the police and he just did not have any intention in talking to me. It didn't seem like he just wanted to talk to 911. And in the end, I didn't break the law, so no one came. I mean, for his purposes, he should have wanted to talk to me. He could have at least kind of, made me feel unpleasant. I mean, nothing happened, But what I wanted to talk about is, I did not break the law, but still, as a human being understanding what police forces do, I didn't want to go to the grocery store for a while because I wanted to wait so I could be there, so I could assert my rights on my property and make sure that the police don't take anything or raid anything. I mean,
Well, no, this is a really exciting story. So, I mean, they called the police, and then you had already told them, hey, I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry for firing a weapon. I'm sorry for creating a loud noise that disturbed you, right?
Right.
And then they went home, and that was the end of it.
Well, no, they wanted to stay out and call the police. And so the guy was calling me over, and as I said, I went back in my house, put away my gun.
Hold on, but he called the police. Nothing happened, and then he went home.
Well, no, he called the police, and he was standing within his yard, and he could see into my yard. And then it had been a while. He was standing there 5 minutes, supposedly calling the police, which what I would assume he'd be doing, but. Yeah, no police officers ended up coming, and he didn't seem, he seemed like he didn't want to talk to me and talk about how maybe as neighbors we could figure out, maybe I shouldn't shoot a gun during these times. Instead, just wanted to call 911.
Yeah, no, this
with any cooperative.
Colin, this is a really interesting story, and really illuminates a very fundamental element of statism, which is that you can avoid conflict entirely by farming it out and saying, oh, well, someone's doing something I don't like, let me call the police and sick the police on them. And I'm really glad that you have the enlightened enough perspective to not be the kind of asshole who says, well, I have a right to fire guns on my property because it's my property and I'm going to do it, when you know that it's just pissing people off, that you're reducing the quality of life of others.
If I hear a gunshot, I'll sort of be startled. I'll probably go investigate. I probably won't tell the person to stop shooting unless they're doing it, a ton. But,
well, if someone is in the process of actively firing multiple rounds, it's probably not the smartest thing to stand behind them and yell at them because, they might turn around and keep shooting. So there's a really important part of this, that your neighbor sounds like, okay, a very legitimate thing, right? Hey, my neighbor just fired two shotgun rounds in his backyard and I'm concerned. There's a gunfire in the neighbor's backyard. I'm gonna totally natural, right? To be concerned. Is someone getting shot? Is someone doing something that they shouldn't be doing? I'm gonna look over the fence and see what's going on. And I would hope that my neighbor is not going to turn his backyard into a shooting range, because I think in a real fundamental sense, and this is where, establishing a libertarian or voluntary stateless society is so exciting, is that you get to develop all the ways of regulating non-violently this kind of behavior, so that you can say, well, in this neighborhood, it's like you could say, I'm starting my own neighborhood or development, and in this area, we're saying by living here, you agree to not fire guns in your backyard unless it's for defensive purposes, right? And really, I would kind of want that to be an agreed upon regulation in my community. I don't want to live somewhere where all of my neighbors are firing guns in their backyards all the time, or I don't want to live next to a shooting range, just my personal preference, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I just feel, though, here's a little more enlightenment into the story. There was actually two neighbors that ended up coming out.
Okay.
The first one said, that he was concerned about he had kids. So he was the first guy. I was like, I was totally apologetic because I sincerely felt bad that maybe I startled one of his kids and, they got worried that someone was getting shot, But so anyways, that guy, I said sorry, and he just keeps sort of nagging at me when it's obviously going nowhere because I stopped. I'm not going to do it again. I said I'm sorry. I just don't get what else I can do. And then so he says my neighbor over there is a cop. And so that's when the guy who ended up calling 911 came out. Supposedly the guy who called 911 was a cop.
Oh, geez.
Okay, well,
this. Oh man. Well, this really gets to a much deeper sort of, again, fundamental element of statism, which is that if government is the protection racket that it is, and in order for it to exist, it needs people to have conflict in society. It needs people to be incapable of doing what you are doing as an adult, saying, you know what, all right, I have a dispute. You're complaining about my behavior.
I'm not even that old of an adult. That's what gets to me is I'm 19. How do these guys?
You're an adult.
My age.
You're more of an adult than they are. And this is my point: is that the government needs people to be emotionally stunted children who are incapable of expressing their feelings and their needs to fellow human beings as an essential part of dispute resolution. They need people to say, oh my gosh, I don't like what someone else is doing. I'm afraid. I have no idea what to do. I know I'm going to vote for somebody, or I'm going to call 911. Please come and protect me, and point guns at people and just, I don't want to deal with this, and stick their fingers in their ears. And this is what I love about this story is that this is like a perfect contrast between a libertarian society way of resolving disputes versus the statist society way of resolving disputes. Is that when you are a libertarian, you believe in your rights, you're able to communicate this, you're an emotionally healthy, independent human being who can express his needs and express his feelings and say, okay, well, I'm sorry I did this. I apologize. I don't want to be a bad neighbor. I will stop, and I was experimenting, or I was exercising my rights, and just because I knew that this was legal and I want to see what would happen, and I found out that you're bothered by this, and I want to be a good neighbor, so I'm going to stop. Whereas the neighbor in this situation comes and says, well, instead of being like, oh, well, thank you, sir. What's your name? Can we get along? Can we be, can we have a happy, productive relationship where we don't call other people with guns to come in and settle our disputes? Can we do this like adults? No, let's just call the police. And you're very lucky in this case because while in your the microcosm of your story, nonviolence triumphed because you live in a unique jurisdiction. The reality is that the majority of conflicts in the rest of the country of this level of significance are resolved instead, or I should say, resolved through the government.
And that it's just really too bad because in my story, you could see if that guy would have approached it from my sort of approach and would have talked to me, he would have gotten a much better response than he ended up getting at the end because the police didn't come and talk to me. He could have said whatever he wanted to me and, it would have been nonviolent. It wouldn't have gotten the police involved, wasted their time. I think just in that individual situation, my nonviolent sort of wanting to get along with you, even though maybe I did something that upset you, I'm going to apologize and still try to get along with you. You're my neighbor. I want to like you. It really ended up triumphing over the sort of, I'm going to go call the police. And I think that's what's important for people to see in their daily lives is how nonviolent sort of solutions really end up making the better person or who ends up winning the dispute. Even in, when the police get called, the violent person ends up getting the dispute a lot of the time, sadly. But I think, when we have a community and a nonviolent person appears and a violent person appears, and the community listens, the entirety of the community and peers I'm talking about, not, some two poor people in a rich neighborhood where no one gets their struggles. But I mean, when the peers overview the actions, I believe the non-violent person will always triumph. I think only in situations that the state sets up, voluntary or non-voluntary, end up with court dates where people who started with violence end up winning. But other than that, I think the violent person, they end up losing.
Yep. And in contrast to your approach, your neighbor's statist solution is inefficient, it is dangerous, it is childish, and it is far inferior to the incredible example that you have set in this very small incident, but of, I think, a great moral significance, set an example of how to live by the principles of freedom. And I applaud you, and I thank you for sharing that story, Colin. All right, we got time for one or two more calls. Let's see. We've got a Carrick Campy. Carrick. Have you never heard of that name? Carrick. Well, at least it's like a real name. Maybe we should look for the Witchfinder General again instead. All right, Carrick, we're getting you on the line because Carrick chatted to us. Would you agree? Oh, no. Would you agree that the institution of marriage is an anti-liberty proposition? Why or why not? Well, let's ask the guy who just got married. Jeffrey, is it an anti-liberty proposition? Well, I don't like the word institution of marriage. It's such a, I mean, if a marriage is a sacred or even, holy, if you want to go there, or, whatever it is, agreement between two individuals, where the hell do you get this institution thing? Is there like some president of marriage? Is there like some minister of marriage somewhere, or the global board of marriage? It's a county board of marriage, right? I mean, what the hell is this thing? This whole idea of it being an institution of marriage is just a horrible statist metaphor for the legal structure of marriage, which shouldn't exist. Marriage as a concept, and if you want to call that the institution, the cultural institution, okay, fine. But really, still, when it comes down to it, it's an agreement that is voluntary, essentially, usually, hopefully, not always, I know, between two individuals. So in and of itself, it's not an anti-liberty proposition at all. It's a contract. It might be verbal, it might be unstated, it might have lots of other implications or presumptions, but it's essentially an agreement between two individuals. There's nothing anti-liberty about that, as long as it remains consensual and nonviolent. Eric Mackey. Have more statists and liberals as guests on your podcast, Adam. These conversations bang on all cylinders. I love watching you destroy these guys. Hashtag Kokesht. All right, thanks, Eric. Really appreciate that. Dave likes the show so much he donated a Litecoin. Awesome. There's the TXID, transaction ID. Thanks for telling things like they are. Awesome. And let's see. We have these chats from yesterday. Well, that's all we have. That's it. We don't have anybody else who wants to call in on a Friday afternoon. I guess it's time to end with our special comment for the day. That's right. We saw the very, very exciting headline this morning. Yes, Jeffrey? All right. We got to zoom in real close for the special comment. This morning, we saw the very exciting headline. Really the most important scientific breakthrough of certainly my lifetime. Scientists have just announced they are capable of growing vaginas in a laboratory. And when I mentioned this to the people in the room, one of them said, why? What for? And I was, why? Because vaginas are fucking awesome. Like, really, would you have to ask why? Why do we want more vaginas? Like, you can grow vaginas in the laboratory. I mean, people are still selling, pocket pussies and what was it that Joe Rogan was sponsored by forever? The fleshlight. Yeah, it's because it looks like a flashlight, but get it? But no, now they can actually grow real vaginas in the laboratory. We started figuring this out. Like, oh, okay, so if you can get a vagina implanted, I mean, I assume that, of course, there's the obvious legitimate medical purpose. If you have a defective vagina, you can get a new one. You just change it out. Hey, it happens. It happens. If you're a victim of female circumcision, I mean, hey, I mean, I'm a victim here myself. I think I'd like to be able to grow some foreskin in a laboratory if that was possible. I'm just saying, I'm not a complete person right now. I am less. Thank you. I would hope. But until then, at least I can get an extra vagina put in, right? I mean, and this actually, it wasn't my idea. It was a woman in the room who said, yeah, we'll get an I could have it. I mean, I love my vagina. It's awesome. Why can't I have 2 of them? Wouldn't that be great? And then we got really creative with this, because then you could, I mean, if you get an extra vagina, I mean, where would you put it? Would you put it where the other one is, or would you put it on your butt? How about your foot? How about your ear? You could turn your ear into a vagina. You could put one on your shoulder. And I mean, if you think about this, I mean, this could get really fun. You're running around. I mean, they're not making penises in labs yet. But then, like, if you could get one, like, if you could get a vagina here, and then a penis, and then a vagina. I mean, you think about like where this. I mean, you think about where this is going, and how how fun this could get with the personal ads on online dating sites, right? How do you describe yourself when like the side of your body is covered in random genitalia? It's like people become lock and key for each other, PVVP looking for VPPV or 2 VPs. We'll take that. And that's our special comment for the day. Thank you so much for listening to the Adam vs. the Man podcast, coming at you live at adamversustheman.com/live. Extra vaginas. Cool, huh?